What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Fierce Framework podcast, where we talk about becoming fierce through messy action, baby steps, and cultivating confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm a business coach with a passion to see women breaking out of the mold society tells us we're supposed to fit into and to start living life more on our own terms. I believe the world benefits when women are living lives that we're lit up about and we're pursuing a purpose that makes us feel fulfilled. My goal with this podcast is to share inspiration, stories of other entrepreneurs just like you, and practical tools and tips to help you become fierce in your business. If that sounds good to you, you're going to love this episode. Let's get down to it. What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to another episode of the Fierce Framework. So, on the podcast and in the email newsletter, we've been talking about like rest and kind of doing less and romanticizing rest and all that good stuff. So, it feels like kind of in the natural flow of things to talk about boundaries and kind of how to say no to things. One of the crucial parts of my journey has been like doing less. And so a lot of that requires communicating that, right? And kind of learning how to say no and getting comfortable with that. And I know that that can be like a huge challenge for a lot of us because, especially if you're a woman, you were raised to probably be available to everyone else and kind of take care of everybody else and show up and be there and support. And these are good things. But it can be dangerous when you're doing all that to the detriment of your own self and like your health and your goals and like your purpose in life, right? So part of that is learning how to say no. We're not doing that. Thank you. I will not be doing that type thing. So, I'm talking about boundaries not in the sense of like therapist boundaries, but more in the sense of like, because I'm a coach, not a therapist, like protecting kind of your space and energy, especially when it comes to like prioritizing you, yourself, and like what you're doing, and therefore your business, right? So, yeah. The definition, I mean, is still pretty much the same though, right? A boundary is like what you're choosing to do and what you're choosing to not do. So it's not like we're not making anybody else do things for us. It's just like I'm setting a boundary of what I'm going to do. But in this context of like more of a coaching situation, I'm kind of using it to mean like specifically helping you stick to your priorities and do more for you and less for others. So I still use the word boundary because it's about what you're doing and what you're not doing, but it's like specifically in the context of how you're like reserving and protecting your energy and your time and your capacity for your priorities and what matters to you. So a lot of overlap, but if you're more familiar with hearing boundaries in the terms of like therapy, same type of situation, but maybe a little bit different, like facet of that, if that makes sense. So, yeah, let's dive in, right? A couple things. I think I have like three main points. And so, also, side note, ADHD, let me know. I've been kind of experimenting back and forth with more of like an outline and like bullet points and communicating those points to you so you can kind of like keep track of where we're at in the conversation versus like more free flowing, like train of thought type thing. And so I am super open to feedback. Let me know if you have a preference, if something's working for you, if it's not working for you, if the structure is like helping. In my mind, the thought process was like, hey, if I have more of a structure and like key points, then maybe that will help clarify like the value that this episode is intending to provide as opposed to kind of like train of thought more of a storytelling type vibe because I think sometimes that can take a little bit more work to like pull out what's going to work for you as opposed to me like kind of putting it in bullet points like, hey, this is the value I'm trying to provide, and then you can take or leave it if it works for you or not, versus like just sharing and kind of telling a story like more organically, and then it's like up to you what you glean from it. So that's why I've transitioned more into like the bullet point approach. But let me know, bro. I'm here for you. So always open to feedback. Yes. So step number one, the bullet point I want to start with is one of the key factors is knowing yourself. Like that has been pivotal for me for knowing like what is aligning with my boundary or with my priorities and what isn't. In order to know that, you have to know what your priorities are, you have to know what your values are, and you have to know what you want. Boom. This also comes into play if you're ADHD like me and you have those moments where like you want to do all the things because my friend Megs, she is the founder of Organizing an ADHD Brain, and she loves to say, if everything is important, then nothing is important. And that is so true. And that is why the FIERCE framework, FIERCE is an acronym, that F stands for focus. And that's why it's the first step, is because we can do all the things and you can do whatever you want. You just can't do everything all at once, right? So we want to, part of what has been so helpful for me and what I coach is to let's figure out what do you want to start with? What do you want to focus on right now? And that way you can kind of have a hierarchy of what is most important and then other things kind of fall into place or they don't, they fall behind. And that's okay as long as your priorities are up top, your priorities are getting taken care of. Okay. So, in a business sense, right? We want to know what are the non-negotiables? What are the things that are making money in my business? What are the things that are making an impact that are actually helping me get where I want to go? You can rebrand and redesign your website every day, every week, every whatever month, like for the rest of your life and keep upgrading your website and business cards and have like the most perfect, beautiful everything. But if you're never selling to anyone, if you're never making an offer to anyone, you're not going to make money. So that type of logic, right, is how one of the easiest ways to figure out, okay, what are priorities? What things should be at the top of the list? And it's like, okay, what things are making an impact? And then also for like personal, right? So if I'm on a budgeting journey right now, and it's so great. It's actually been really empowering. Yeah, so it's just you can really see how much money you don't have. It's so sad. And I'm still in corporate, right? So you're like, this is what this is what I'm selling my soul for? Amazing. But moving on. Okay, so a budgeting journey, right? So there have been a lot of conversations where it's like with myself and my friends where it's like, okay, is that aligning with my priorities? Because in reality, I'm still spending money. I'm still doing things. I have a lot of debt to pay off, so it's kind of more of a marathon than a sprint. And I want my life to look different in the future than it does right now. So, like people talk about with dieting, they're like, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And that's kind of where I'm at. My budget is not just a budget, it's like a lifestyle shift. And the budget is a tool that helps me stay on track with the things that I've decided that I want, right? So in a moment, I might want to buy takeout, right? But it doesn't align with my priority of paying down my debt. So then, it's kind of a side conversation. You can have that conversation with yourself and be like, okay, am I willing to splurge on the takeout and kind of take care of myself in that way? Like, is that really going to like feed my soul? Is that really going to benefit me enough in this moment where it's worth kind of sacrificing the long term for right now, right? Because you're always making trade-offs. And sometimes that's okay, but a lot of the time you're like, actually no, it's not worth it. That was more of like a knee-jerk reaction or kind of something that I wanted to, feel good in this moment. But actually, now that I think about how it doesn't align with my long-term goals, the takeout's not worth it. And let me just, throw some ramen on or make a salad or whatever, right? So that is why that's part of why it's so important to know yourself and to know what you want, what you're working on, what your values are. Okay. Because with my budget, I still value my relationships with people. So initially, it was really easy for me to look at what I was spending going out and be like, I just need to stay in my house. I just need to not leave my house. And boom, I will be spending less money. And I did that for a while because I am an introvert and I'm kind of a hermit and I love staying at my house. But then I also got to a different point because we're multifaceted, right? I got to a different point in like my, I don't know, soul journey, I guess, where I was like, all right, I had this period of like kind of isolation and it was good for a while. And now I think I need to switch it up because isolation is kind of a tool and it's good for us, it can be good for a season, it can be detrimental sometimes depending on where you're at, like, mentally, emotionally, everything, right? So I felt myself like transitioning and I was like, okay, so I want to, now that I'm prioritizing that like soul, emotional, social growth, and I'm wanting to go out and do things. For example, like I go to a networking group where we go to a coffee shop, and it's important for me to contribute. That's one of my values. And I love supporting local businesses, right? So I'm not going to go and not get a coffee. A, because I think that's weird and rude, and maybe that's like the boomer in me. But so it actually aligns with my values to show up and kind of contribute and be part of the group. And in the sense of like supporting that local business and being, one of the contributing members of the group where it's like, yes, our group is supporting your business. We're not all going to show up and not buy anything. So that's one of those things where it's like, okay, great. So now that kind of moves up the priorities in my budget. That is something I'm budgeting for. And it's like, okay, so something else falls down, right? And if you don't know what you want, if you don't know what your focus is, if you don't know what you're working on, you don't have that like standard of measurement in order to help you gauge what is a priority and what is not. And so that's why I start with it. Like, it's so important to know yourself and to like, so those are kind of the sub bullets, right? Like, what do you want? What are your priorities? What are your values? So that you have an idea of what am I measuring my options against so that I can see what measures up and what doesn't. Also, boundaries come into play, like we were talking about therapy earlier, right? Like boundaries come into play so much and they can be such a like huge thing when we've been raised to be people pleasers our whole lives, which a lot of women have. So I want to tie into like the personal side of it. And I can't remember like where I heard this, but there's a quote that's basically like, if you don't tell people who you are, then everyone else will tell you who you should be. And I think we've normalized that so much where we're trained to like meet everyone else's needs first. Like you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a sister, you're a friend before you're a person. And those things are all important, but if they all come before you being an actual person, how full, whole, healthy of a person are you going to be? Whereas if the priority is to be a person, a healthy, vibrant, alive person who is also a mother, daughter, sister, wife, like, then those priorities are a little bit different depending on where the hierarchy is, right? So, I love that because I think that's, I mean, honestly, we could talk about knowing yourself so much, but that's kind of where I want us to start. And that is the foundation upon which we build boundaries, because that also helps identify where you need boundaries and where it's like a non-issue, right? So, for example, I think having a strong personality has actually been such a powerful tool for me once I've like allowed myself to express that strong personality. Because I'll talk about like things I don't like, things I'm not gonna do, things I'm not interested in, things I think are stupid. Sometimes, I let my mouth run away with me. but my like opinions and my vibe is like out there. And so people get a pretty good idea of what I'm probably open to doing and what I'm not. Or even little things with this is tying into the next piece of communication. Even little things of like talking about what you like to do and what you don't like to do. Like, I'm not a huge kid-friendly person. I love the concept of children. I think children are amazing. They're the future. They should absolutely be taken care of and they deserve to be safe. Um, but like me personally, like I do not want children. I struggle being around children because I don't know what to do oftentimes. And like those types of things are clear to where even my brothers and sisters rarely ask me to babysit their kids because it's just like it doesn't fit my vibe because I am clear about who I am. And so then it's a thing where it's like, okay, if it is a situation where, somebody needs a ride or something, like it helps you knowing yourself and then being like communicating who you are helps other people like self-identify what boundaries you probably have and like eventually people like don't even ask. But on the other hand, knowing that I like to travel, right? So if you're talking about what you do like and what you do and what you are spending your money on, right? Like I might not be open to spending my money on, going out to some, going out every weekend and like buying drinks or whatever. Like that's not a priority in my budget. We're not doing that. However, I have a friend who's getting married in another, like it's a destination wedding. Okay, I value my friendships and I like travel, so that makes it even sweeter, right? That is something I'm prioritizing in my budget. So it helps like other people when you're clear about who you are and you're expressive about who you are and what you do and what you don't do. Also, like in a business sense, right? If you're just naturally talking about what you do, what you're passionate about, and even things that like you're not okay with or you're not interested in, then that helps people self-identify, right? Like if you're a strategist and not a VA, and you're talking about that, like I help people paint a vision for their business and overcome obstacles versus I take on the admin for someone's business and I do the things they don't want to do. Like I take care of those admin tasks that are dragging you down and taking over your to-do list. Like those are two very different things. And so the more clear you are about who you are and what you do and what you're interested in and what you don't do, then the less you actually have to communicate and enforce like boundaries because it's so clear. And then if you have, a one-off situation where somebody's trying to get you to do something you don't do, then it's much easier to be like, seriously, bro? No, we're not doing that. Hey, so on this podcast, we're always talking about how to make progress towards your goals and reach your dreams. But what if you're stuck or you're not sure where to go next or you need some more support, right? Well, I am so excited to let you know that I have a couple of openings available for a free business strategy session. I know it's a mouthful, but what it is essentially a free coaching session with me. It's really an opportunity to get to know more about you and your business and where you might be stuck or needing some inspiration or a different perspective or some new insight or someone to bounce some ideas off of. And it gives us a chance to work together with no obligation from you, right? So you get that free session and then we both have a chance to see like, does this feel like a good fit? Do we feel like we could benefit from continuing this type of relationship? And then of course, if we feel like it's right and we want to keep working together, I can send you a link for future coaching. But that first session is free for potential new clients. So if you've worked with me before, I'm sorry. I love you. It's not for you. We already did that. I can't wait to see you again. But potential new client doesn't mean that you have to buy anything. It's just someone who hasn't been my client before. So if you feel like you could benefit from an hour talking strategy, getting new perspectives, getting you unstuck and back to business, back to making money and on track to hit your goals, I'll include the link in the description so you can go ahead and get signed up for your free business strategy session so we can get you unstuck, inspired, and back to hitting those goals. All right, let's jump back into the episode. But I think what can be so intimidating for a lot of us is that communication piece. So I want to make sure that we talk about that. And we've like gotten into that, right? I think this is part of why the outline is so awkward for me because I start with a concept and so I can see how it flows and then I try to like break it up. And so I like flow too much sometimes and I'm like, we're now in like 1.5 coming into point point number 2. It's communication. And so I do want to say like no is a complete sentence and you don't have to explain yourself at all. I'm not trying to say that you owe everyone an explanation as to why you're not doing something. You don't. Again, no is a complete sentence. Boom. So if this is a non-issue for you, skip right past it. But I think a lot of the struggle that a lot of people I've talked to have with boundaries is the communication piece because then you're dealing with it's a conversation, right? If you have to communicate a boundary, you're in the middle of a conversation, and then that other person can say something or come back with they can react. And it's like, okay, then you're dealing with like, what do I do if? What if? And that what if question gets so many of us in so many situations. So I want to talk about the communication piece because I feel like that's one of the things that is such a like a roadblock for a lot of us. So communicating can be really helpful in overcoming that like fear of how are they going to react. And so like front running type thing where you're communicating in advance. And this can be really powerful, especially when you are like making a big change where you used to operate one way and now you're changing how you operate because it can feel awkward for us too. Like, well, of course it makes sense that my friends would think that I would continue to go out with them and spend money at bars every weekend because that's what I used to do. And now that I'm not doing that anymore, these are my friends. These are people I hung out with every weekend. It makes sense for me to communicate with them and just give them a heads up. Like, hey guys, I'm super excited about getting my budget together because I'm looking forward to saving money for traveling more and paying off my debt. Like, no, 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 no. And so part of why I use that example is for a couple of reasons. Like you can get in front of it and like, set that expectation of like, hey, I understand. We've kind of had a non-spoken social contract. This is what we've been doing. It makes sense for you to think I'm going to continue doing it. But I'm communicating with you because I'm changing now. And so you're kind of honoring that relationship, keeping people in the know, right? By letting them know, hey, and communicating what you're doing and what you're excited about. Because if they're your friends, they want to support you. So make it easy to support you by saying no, by telling them what you're saying yes to. Like, hey, I'm saying yes to myself. I'm excited about what I'm moving into. I'm excited about using budgeting as a tool, and I'm using this money to travel, to do something that makes me feel more alive. Isn't that cool? Aren't you excited to support me? And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. So now, if I'm not seeing you, you're hanging out, buying drinks at a bar every weekend, or like whatever it is you're changing, right? I know why. And the communication takes out the factor of like, she just stopped showing up all of a sudden. Like, is she mad at me? Did something happen? Like, so a lot of the time it's just common courtesy. Again, not everyone deserves an explanation, but an explanation can go a long way in the right situation. So when you are, yeah, when you're making a big change or when you're setting new boundaries with people. So those are kind of going hand in hand, like where you're doing something new and you're switching up your behavior, communication can be super powerful, especially if it's a relationship that's important to us. It makes sense in some situations that somebody would expect an explanation and kind of not be wrong for having that expectation. So some of the things that I really like with the communication piece are talking about what you're excited about and like how that is nurturing to you and what that's doing for you. So it's like, hey, I'm not I don't know, writing thank you cards anymore. Because I I don't know. So I should have thought of why don't I think of examples before I pop on here? I'm so sorry. But it's like, hey, I'm not writing thank you cards anymore. I'm sending this text. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming to my party. I had a great time with you. Maybe you used to send beautiful thank you cards after every event. And so you're just giving people a heads up. Like, I don't do that anymore. I found that I have so much more time to do work on my business, to work on my podcast, to do XYZ. And so, like, that's what I'm using my time for. And communicate, A, you're reinforcing to yourself, like, I'm saying yes to me. And therefore I'm saying no to this. And that's why. Because even if I'm sad that I don't get a beautiful thank you card from you anymore, I can still be happy and support you in our friendship because I realize, like, oh, she's not doing that because she's doing something for herself. So it can be a little sad for me that I didn't get my thank you card, but you gave me something to kind of cling on to and be excited that I can support you in this way. Like, okay, cool. Like I see what she's doing. She's using this time for herself, right? It's like I'm not watching a million episodes of Netflix, with my bestie every night because I'm working on my business after work. So now it's, once a week or it's one episode or whatever it is, but you're explaining like, hey, I'm using this time now to build something that I'm super passionate about that's going to help me change my life. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, I'm sad. I'm going to miss watching Netflix with you, but dang, dude, like, that is something I can get on board with and support. And I'm so proud of you for doing that. So you're kind of giving them something to work with and communicating to set that expectation. Right. And so, again, point three, we've already kind of premonitioned, right? Boundaries aren't about saying no to other people. They're about saying yes to yourself. And this is like what drove this home for me that was so helpful and powerful. And so I really want to make sure that I'm highlighting this for you. Um, we talked about at the beginning. Boundaries are about you, what you will be doing, what you won't be doing, what you are doing, what you're not doing. And so it's about saying yes to you. Because again, like Meg says, if everything is important, then nothing is important. So it's really about setting those priorities and saying yes to yourself. So whether that is making time for yourself in the morning to really like take a second, gather yourself, check in, maybe have a cup of coffee in the quiet or take some time to journal. And so then that means you're not doing XYZ or you're not hanging out with friends late at night or you're getting up earlier or whatever that is, you're saying yes to yourself. And it also helps, honestly, just like in a practical sense, it helps with like the loss of what you're not doing because you get to remind yourself of what you're doing instead. Like, yeah, I'm not ordering takeout right now. Would that be super nice? Would that feel really good in this moment? Yeah, because it would just be easy and I could just do it and I could just have takeout, right? But I've made this decision that I'm saying yes to myself in a different way. And I'm using that money for something else that is a priority to me. And I was like, okay, okay. Takeout wasn't going to be that great anyway. I'm going to pay down some debt. And like, all right. So saying yes to yourself, it like refocuses what all this is for, right? That you are working on pouring into yourself, figuring out how to live your purpose and doing things that light you up. So you're like the best version of yourself. And then it's like, yeah, so I'm not just saying no to you. I'm not turning people down for no reason. It's because I'm doing these other things. And so I like to think of it as like using your yes to say no. Like, I would love to, like, hey, I think it's really cool that you're doing XYZ. I want to support you however I can. Maybe it's a business bestie, right? And she's like launching a program and like wants you to buy it, right? And you're like, hey, super, super love that you're doing this. Want to support you. I'm happy to support you. I'm excited to support you in XYZ ways. I'll share your stuff, I'll refer people, whatever. I'm not buying the program right now because I'm doing XYZ. I'm saying yes to myself in these ways. I'm using my money for this, that, and the other. Or, I'm investing in a software or a different program or whatever it is, or I'm saving my money right now. And I'm saying yes to myself in this way. And that's why I'm saying no to you. And then, kind of like in that example, right? If there are other ways that you want to support and say yes, then great. The drinking example, like, hey, I'm not going out every night anymore because I'm saying yes to myself in these ways. I started working out in the morning, or I'm saving the money, or I'm using that time to work on my business. And then depending on what you want to do, but I'm happy to show up once a month, or I'll show up and drink water, or like whatever the situation is, right? And again, like that's not necessary. No is a complete sentence. You don't have to compromise. You can just say, I'm not going to make it. Which again, side note, is my favorite no for events and stuff. Because again, introverted. I need a lot of time alone for energy. And there's a lot of things that I said no to over the years because I used to say yes to everything, and I was at everything all the time, and I was always busy, and I was always rushing, rushing, rushing. And then I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And so so this is kind of counteracting the last 2 points, right? Of like how to make it easier and flowery and communicate. You can also simplify and just be like, I'm not going to make it. You don't have to say, oh no, because no, 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 no. You can. Like, I'm not doing that because I'm saying yes to myself in this way. Or you can also be like, not gonna make it. And then it's like you're not lying. You're not saying I can't make it. You're not, and then like I'm not going to make it. I won't be doing that. Anyway, so kind of two sides of the coin there, right? With ADHD, it's always a gamut of examples. Um, yeah, saying no to other things that aren't priorities so you can say yes to your priorities is so powerful, and it really helps hone that focus, right? Because it's like you're cutting off more and more of the random crap, and you're letting more and more go, and so it's like you're becoming more streamlined as you're getting rid of the junk and honing in and spending more time and energy and focus on what you actually want to do. And so it's such a powerful thing. And it's one of those things that I think is normal for it to take a lot of practice. So being able to start with small things, or maybe starting in your business and then moving over to your personal life, or vice versa, whatever's like easiest to start with. And then you kind of build that muscle and you grow and you figure out what phrases work for you. Right? Because sometimes, depending on the relationship, I want to have that conversation and I want to explain to you like why I'm switching it up. But other times it's like, you already have a pretty good idea, or I don't owe you an explanation, or I don't want to give you a chance to start nitpicking my reason and try to convince me to change my answer. So I'm just going to say, I won't be making it. Whichever one works. All right. You're doing great. I'm so proud of you. I will see you soon. And until then, keep becoming fierce. Thank you so much for joining me on this past episode of the Fierce Framework, where we talk about becoming fierce through taking messy action, baby steps, and growing your confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you got a lot out of the episode. If you're looking for a little bit more, make sure that you are subscribed to my newsletter. I drop a new email every week. I'm also on social media platforms at The Fierce Framework, and I do have some coaching spots opening up. So if that's something you're interested in, you want to connect on that, feel free to drop me a DM or check out the link that I've included in the description. I can't wait to see you next time, and until then, keep becoming fierce.